Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Sam and Cole podcast presented by Black Creek Outfitters. The weather's changing a bit, and as Cole mentioned last time, Florida-ish cooler weather. And they do have all the neat stuff there, whether it's a hoodie fleece or a vest or whatever you're looking for. I bought a pair of those XA Pro Solomon shoes. I just love those things. Good wintertime stuff. Wintertime, in quotes.
Jacksonville winter.
That's right. So Black Creek Outfitter, our presenting sponsor for the Sam and Cole podcast. We're taping this on, or I guess you can't say tape anymore. I guess we're recording this.
We are.
It's like when people say, hey, when do you film the news? Well, 1964, But we're recording this on Sunday night after the Jaguars' sixth consecutive loss of the year. This time falling to the Tennessee Titans, 16-14, the final. And Cole, being at the game, it was evident that this one really hurt a lot of guys in the locker room. There were 3 or 4 guys who politely declined to talk to us because they were just not happy. They were just shaken up. And I don't know if it was, they're sick of the losing, or it was how this game was lost with a massive mistake by Cecil Shorts. The block kick there at the end. And Gus Bradley addressed that a little bit, and I thought that the answer was exactly correct. And it doesn't mean it make it any better. He said when you get closer, the little things that you don't do are magnified to the point where you can point at those things and say, if we had done that better, then we'd have had a better opportunity to win.
You know the thing that concerns me, though? We know this is a young team. If young players make mistakes, and they did make some, you say, okay, Alan Hearn slips down, leads to an interception.
Yep.
All right. Again, it happens. You don't say that it's good, but you say that at least he can learn from it. The 2 biggest plays in the game, tell me if you believe that this is the case. The 2 biggest plays in the game were Cecil Short's fumble and the block punt. Both of the block field goal.
Field goal, okay.
The Shorts is the one experienced offensive player that they have who's been a starter, with the exception of Zane Beadles, who was the guy who his guy came right up over him on the field goal. Was the guy who blocked it. When you have veteran players making mistakes on a team full of rookies, you're not going to win. You have to have the veterans playing like veterans and hope that the rookies grow and get better and improve. That's the frustrating thing to me. Not that the young players are making mistakes. It's that veteran players on an offense with no margin for error to speak of right now are the ones who are making mistakes.
I agree with that. And I've said this, more than once, and you and I have discussed this off air as well. I only wish that Cecil Shorts was half as good as he thinks he is, because we all walk around the locker room like, oh, Shorts, if he's healthy, then everything's fine. No, he's a slot receiver on most other teams, and he may not even be a starter. He is a serviceable guy that has grown in his time in the National Football League. But of all people, I thought, and I wrote this, and you probably saw me tweet this, that he's the guy that you would think that when he catches the ball in the middle of the field inside the 20-yard line, he's the one who knows that to cover and protect is now the single most important thing rather than get the 2 extra yards.
And I will also say this was not a situation where he was trying to fight through guys. I mean, the guy who hit him came from his blind side as he was coming in. It wasn't the most egregious fumble ever, but where it happened and when it happened is something you can't have.
It ended the game. Being there, it ended the game. Right there. You could feel the air come right out of the Jaguars because they felt they had some momentum, they had some things going, and like you just said, it wasn't Alan Hearns making that mistake or Allen Robinson or Marquise Lee. It was the guy that they count on who makes that mistake. And you know when fumbles happen in the National Football League? When you get hit from the blind side.
Yeah.
You know, when you've been in the league 3 or 4 years, you know somebody's coming from somewhere. You know, it's kind of like that quarterback back there. He knows the 3.2 seconds. He's got to get rid of the ball. Somebody's coming from somewhere. And there's just to me, you know, I don't know about the Beatles thing. I don't know if it's a question of trying to do too much. Sometimes you know, you have those errors, but you're exactly right. This team's not good enough to overcome mistakes across the board. They probably are good enough to overcome rookie mistakes that they learn from. Maybe not in that situation right then, and maybe not, you know, being good enough to win a game when they make mistakes. But you know, when Chris Clemens lines up offsides, you know, on a 3rd down.
Yeah, he gets flagged for babbining.
Yeah, I mean, except for babbining, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I just, you know, those are the things when you got Jordan Todman, you know, young player, but certainly not a rookie.
No.
And that ball was slightly underthrown, but he's got to make that catch. You know, those are the things that have to be done in this league, because when you watch good teams, win, those are the things that happen to them. Guys make those plays.
And so you're looking at maybe 4 or 5 or 6 key plays that the Jaguars didn't make that led them to lose to a pretty bad Titans team.
Yeah.
I mean, if the Titans finished with 6 wins, I think they'd be pretty happy with that compared to the talent they have on the roster. So I'm looking at the Jaguars' schedule now. Can we do a little excavation here? Can we do a little exploratory trip and try to figure out when the Jaguars might win one here if they don't improve dramatically?
I think you and I talked last week that I thought they needed to win 2 of these next 3, including today, in order to kind of build some confidence, be able to be competitive in some other games. And I thought the Pittsburgh game was also a potential game that was, I hate to call it, a winnable game. But none of that has happened. So now Cleveland, who just spanked Pittsburgh, comes in here Sunday, and it doesn't appear that the Jaguars have the firepower now even to hang with the Browns. The next week it's against Miami at home, and the you know,
they just matched the firepower with Green Bay basically.
Right.
Went right down the wire. The Bengals.
The following week, the Bengals are one of the AF's top 5 teams in the AFC.
Yep.
The Cowboys are, you know,
tied for the best record in the league.
Right. Or some people are saying, oh, they're, you know, it's the hyperbole of Dallas, but you know, they're the best team in the league. Yeah, that's right.
Then they got to go to Indy
right
after the bye week.
That's nothing.
Then the Giants at home.
It should be competitive, but who knows where the Giants will be at that point.
And then maybe Sunday, December 7th. December 7th, the Texans come to town. Mm-hmm. That's the next one where you'd go, yeah, maybe there. Yeah. Now, again, I expect Blake Bortles to continue to improve. I thought he was very good today. Again, using the rookie grading scale and not using the Pro Bowl quarterback grading scale. Using the rookie quarterback grading scale, I thought he was very good. I thought he was B+ today, and you'll take that most days.
He clearly is the guy that you want to be your quarterback for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
You found him. He's good, and he's gonna get better. So, and he's the right size, the right attitude. He's a natural leader. Guys like him. He's everything you want in your quarterback. As you mentioned last week, it's funny to say, but it's the only position on the field right now that you can not have a question about. He's our quarterback.
Luke Jokel struggled again, by the way.
Yeah, move on and move on.
Luke Jokel struggled. You know, so when I look at that list of games that the Jaguars have coming up, and I start thinking what has to happen in order for them to have more of a chance in those games. Now, again, I don't think the Jaguars are going 0-16, barring, you know, a rash of injuries. It's so hard to go 0-16 in the NFL. I don't see that. But in order for them to be competitive, consistently competitive, which is what this year was supposed to be about, they're going to have to tackle better. They're going to have to cover better, particularly the tight end that continues to be an issue. They're going to have to – that offensive line is going to – I thought the offensive line played pretty well against the Steelers. Took a real step back this week against a Titans team that's not exactly, you know, the fearsome foursome up front there.
Right.
They got to find a way to run the ball. They got to guys. Veterans can't be making mistakes. There are so many things they need to improve on in order to just be competitive, much less win a bunch of games. That Gus Bradley's going to have to pull out another great second half turnaround in order for this thing to look like it's heading in the right direction.
And all of those things, when you watch them, and as you and I have seen virtually every play of the last 2 years, you realize that they have, on a lot of levels, the right guys in the right situations now. The right guys that play in the right positions. But it's just a matter of either taking your lumps or maybe extrapolating out to what you think these guys can do a little bit too high. Because, you think, okay, that offensive line is going to be fine. Well, when do they take those steps forward incrementally like we thought they did last week against Pittsburgh, and then a big step backwards I thought this week as well. They didn't run the ball effectively at all. And it's not as if they're facing murderer's row in Tennessee. Bortles is fine. I think the running back position has got guys that can gain a few yards, but there's nobody back there with any magic.
In fantasy football, Sam, where there's what do they call it, a keeper league, or where you after each year you can protect a certain number of guys and the rest of them go back into the draft. If that was the way that things worked with the Jaguars offense, who would be your keepers on the Jaguars offense?
Yeah, Bortles, obviously.
Yeah.
And I like the offensive line. I just don't. I would hate to say that they're a failure at this point.
Oh no, they're too young to say that.
Yeah,
but
right.
In terms of the guys you say, yes, I'm definitely going to. Let me phrase it another way. Which of these guys is definitely going to be on the roster December of 2015? Who's definitely going to be starting and being your guy at that position December at the end of next season?
I think that everybody who's currently there, they think is going to make that incremental step up in order to be that. I think they'll all be there. And it was funny, a conversation I was having with one of our colleagues in the press box today, only because somebody in the crowd had a Justin Blackmon jersey on.
That's interesting.
What if Blackmon gets his act together and shows up?
I had the same thought.
Shows up next year. Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden you got Blackmon, who is a Pro Bowl type receiver potential, and then you've got the 2 draft picks from this year, and you've got a receiving core that you can kind of count on. And if you don't think Blackmon makes that much of a difference, go back and look at the stats of the 4 games he played in last year. The Jaguars' offensive production was doubled every time he was in the game.
Well, and I will say from that standpoint that there are you have to look at it through 2 lenses. One is, what do they do right now to win games? And 2 is building. But the further along we get in this 3-year plan, the more important winning now becomes, using that lens of what are they doing to win now becomes versus winning in the future, because the future is getting here pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. I like the looks of Allen Robinson. I think he can be a very good pro receiver. He's not going to be a game breaker where he's going to have, he's going to run away from people, but he plays a very professional style of wide receiver. I like the looks there. Marquise Lee has skill, but he's got a long way to go in terms of learning how to play the game professionally. I think Clay Harbor is a nice complementary pass-catching tight end. They've got some pieces here and there. And I don't mean to sound all doom and gloom, but boy, they're AR0-6. Now, if you want to play optimistic, the last 5 weeks they've lost by 31, and then by 24, and then by 19, and then by 8, and then by 2. So it's getting better.
Yeah, the losses are getting better. I was even thinking, okay, what would you do to make this team better through free agency in the draft? Let's say they go 2-14. They're going to get the number 1 pick. What do you do in free agency in the draft? What positions do you address?
Boy,
do you have to find another corner? Do you have to find a safety? Do you have to find a linebacker? I don't know that there's a dominant offensive player or that there's a big enough hole on offense that you go and spend draft picks or money on that. You have to just wait for these guys to develop.
It's a really good question, because the positions you would spend a top 2 pick and I'm not counting the Raiders out from having that number 1 pick, by the way. So having the first or second pick, you spend that on a quarterback and left tackle and pass rusher. And if you can find somebody who's a game changer in another position, you could assume that. But those are the positions you usually spend that on. I don't think they're going to spend a pick on a second, first or second pick on a left tackle. I don't think, unless Jokel. I think part of this is Jokel still coming back from the injury, from the surgery. I don't think he's all the way back, but he's really struggling, and you have to see some signs of progress forward. A lot of the positions that they need would not be a position you would spend a number 2 pick on or a number 1 pick on. You wouldn't, cornerback. I think you could, if there was a really top flight corner, I think you could make the case that you could do that. But you wouldn't at safety. You wouldn't at linebacker. If you had a pass rusher, I would take another pass rusher. You could find another, whoever that guy is, another guy to get to the quarterback. But they've got a lot of positions that need it. Running back, you don't spend a pick that high on in this day and age in the National Football League. Tight end, you don't pick that high on. So, again, we may be back in this position that as soon as you have your quarterback, it certainly gives you a lot more flexibility in the offseason to make some moves, and because there are other teams that are going to need a quarterback, and somebody's going to want to come up and get Marcus Mariota or Jameis Winston, maybe, or whoever else is going to be up there at the top of the draft.
I think that Bortles' quality of play has given the green light to Caldwell for personnel decision making. The guys that he has taken. I think that you look at that, you look at how he has started to build this team. It's just a question of those guys actually playing capably. Playing the veterans, I think we talked about this 3 weeks ago. The veterans have to play the way that they have played in the National Football League before they ever got here. Just play that game and then bring the rest of the guys along, because if you have those kinds of mistakes from the veterans, then the rookies don't have anywhere to go with their mistakes as well, except down.
Yeah. And it was a rough weekend for sure if you were a Florida fan and a Jaguars fan.
Yeah.
To lose games by a grand total of 2 games by a grand total of 5 points, and in both games you had a chance to make a play to win the game, and you lost them both.
That's right, and both of them were turned on kicks.
Yeah, I was going to think of the drop in the end zone on third down by Kevin Westbrook, but the winning field goal by LSU for sure. And Mississippi State, number 1 in the country, by the way, with the new polls. I was at, and I think that's the right choice. I think the polls have it right now. I was at a Rotary Meninak tournament. I think I may have mentioned. I don't know if it was on the podcast or not. And somebody asked me if I was at the selection committee, who would be my number 1 seed right now. And this was before Mississippi State won this weekend. I said I think it'd be Mississippi State, largely because of what they've done so far and the quarterback. I think Dak Prescott is a serious Heisman candidate.
It is Ole Miss that beat Alabama, isn't it?
It is Ole Miss, yeah.
Yeah. So
I think Mississippi State's more physical.
I think it's the fun thing. Why it's not Florida State anymore? Because I don't know.
Partly because they haven't played anybody.
The perception of that they haven't won games handily enough. I mean, I find that amusing.
Well, listen, and let me defend myself here. I'm not an AP voter, but last year I was among the first people anywhere to say that Florida State was going to be playing for the national championship. I said it on this podcast about this time last year. I said, listen, Florida, you can see the eye test tells you they're not going to lose. And looking at their schedule, Florida State's going to be playing in the national championship. I thought it would be against Alabama at this point last year, and then the crazy thing happened with the Auburn game. But Florida State doesn't look like the same team this year. I mean, and you can go listen in this day and age of a 4-team playoff where you have to decide who teams 1, 2, 3, and 4 are, a la picking the top 4 seeds in the basketball tournament. It's not just based on record or where they started the season in the polls. The eye test has to come into play there. And for me, Mississippi State's, that team right now.
Florida State beat Clemson without the Heisman Trophy winner in the lineup.
That was their best win of the year so far. And they will have a chance to impress, by the way, this week because they play
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, who's number 5, and just beat Stanford. So,
Sure.
that ask me next week, I may change my mind. Ask me next week, I may also be looking at what the World Series is going to look like. It may blow my mind.
I hope not.
This is Royals. This is the Sam versus Cole American League Championship Series, and so far, it has been.
It has been incredibly unpredictable when, in the 10th inning of Game 1, the team that hit the fewest home runs in Major League Baseball hit 2 home runs in the 10th. One, a left-handed hitter who had 1 home run in his last 163 at-bats during the regular season. Now he's hit 4 in the playoffs.
Yeah. I know I'm saying this as a Royals fan, a guy who grew up going to Royals games and following the Royals and covering the Royals. I don't ever remember a team in any sport that has had more amazing late game heroics in a postseason ever. I mean, they have. By the way, they have not lost a game in the postseason.
Right.
They won the wild card game in extra innings. They won 2 of the 3. Was it 2 of the 3 in the American League Division Series against California, Anaheim, L.A., whatever the Angels are this week, in extra innings. And then they basically won it in the 9th. They won the first game in extra innings in this series. Then they won it basically in the 9th inning. So they are on a Cinderella run like I can never remember any team being on.
And if you look at the Royals and how they're built, if they play the way they did during the regular season, then they need to have that defense, that strong bullpen, and the speed that they have. But they're always going to have those things don't ever go away. But if you all of a sudden add in Mike Moustakas hitting 4 home runs,
a guy, by the way, who was demoted to AAA in
May. From the 9th position in the lineup. I mean, you start adding those kinds of things in, then all of a sudden you have a team that's built for one thing and is adding in another power thing.
Yeah.
Then they become unbeatable.
Gerard Dyson, by the way, one of the Royal speedsters who comes off the bench, said that he didn't think it was going back to Baltimore, and he was pretty sure the Orioles knew it.
Wow. Hopefully that filters through the Oriole clubhouse.
I don't think motivation's been an issue, but interesting that's cropped up.
We'll see what he looks like. See what he looks like if he ever comes to the plate.
Well, listen. So I'll just say this: if you plunk him, he'll be standing on third.
On third, that's true.
So be careful. All right, we'll talk more about the Orioles and Royals probably next time, and we'll certainly talk more about the Jaguars next time right here on the Sam and Cole podcast, presented by Black Creek Outfitters. As always, you can follow Sam on Twitter at Sam Kavaris. Follow me on Twitter at Cole Pepper. We're into the midst of October. Going to be some interesting things are going to play out here with, I think, both the Jaguars and the Gators in particular, the Seminole Sioux over the next couple of weeks. Thanks so much for listening. You can get us on iTunes and on Stitcher as well. And if you follow that, great way to be able to get the newest and latest podcasts as soon as they get posted. I wanted to point this out too, Sam. This is the only podcast in Jacksonville with 2 of the finalists for Best Sports Radio Personalities by Folio Weekly on it. Did you see that?
No.
You won. I saw this week. You won Best TV Sports Anchor.
Yeah.
Hicken won Best Radio Sports Personality, and you and I were the finalists for that. They listed finalists this year, and I think that's funny. I'm touched and honored that the listeners and readers of Folio Weekly would do that. But neither one of us, you or I, have O'Daily Sports Radio.
Radio.
It must be the power of the Sam and Cole podcast.
Of the podcast. Could be. I like that.
Could be. That's right. All right. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next week right here on the Sam and Cole podcast.